quickly just take you through images. And I think that's all the time we have so that we can move to the last bit of few questions. Next, 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 next. So duality that I'm interested in also manifested in mirror images, doubles, and symmetry. This is not my work, this is just a reference. Next, next. To these early grid paintings, next, which further became representational, not abstract, where I started creating abstract images with the help of readable, so the duality existed in that form as well. Next, next. This work is called Twins for obvious reference to 9/11. Next. And these are the houses of Lahore from Pakistan. Next, next, next. I created these works when Pakistan and India tested their nuclear capability, and people like me were, I mean, some people took very obvious route. Liberal view is that it's destructive, and of course it is. But then you call, given this argument of the deterrence, so that's the kind of paradoxes that this work represents. Next. How many of you have been to NCA Trinale? Okay, so this work is on display. It's larger version in one of the corridors of NCA. And I think tomorrow is the last day of the Trinale, if you want to visit. Next. Next. There's a lot to these works in context, but I'm going to skip that. Next. These are 8,000 plus images of European history of painting. Next. Creating this illusion of bookshelf. Next. But it basically depicts the impossibility of translating visual and textual. Next. Next, 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 next. And I created, with this idea of mirror images and doubles, I created few video works. By the way, images are a bit stretched. So in your head, just compress it horizontally. I'm being a perfectionist, it's bothering me. It's a video in which the both self depictions of mine kill each other. Next. 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 Again, dealing with the idea of borders, and this is a work called Peeling Point, in which the possibility of aeroplane colliding is there, but it never happens because of its obvious illusion. So we live between the constant state of fiction and reality. Next. Next. Another work for the Singapore Biennale, it's a site-specific video work, which is called Departure Lounge, where you feel entrapped in the idea of time. Next. So the illusion is created such that you feel entrapped. Next. This work gave me flying phobia, by the way. Next. So I did make some video works as well. Wherever I felt that my ideas require a certain medium or format, I made those shifts. So this is what I was referring to when I said I remain open to possibilities, and I didn't have to do anything special. But because of my fascination with two-dimensionality and being originally a painter and who create two-dimensional images which can be hung onto the wall, I could never deeply develop a taste for video art making, time-based media. I always wanted to see all the time captured in one static image. So I came up with this work called Dislocation Series. Next. Video play kar de. How many of you familiar with Safamwala Chowk in Temple Road? Okay, that's a good number. So this is you can recognize the building. A camera was fixed with the help of a team, and every second for 24 hours a photograph was taken. So it literally recorded 24 hours in the clapping se mera time kam ho jana hai. Thank you. So next. Yeah, so I wanted to create an illusion of a frozen in time image, जैसे CPI रंग के cards होते हैं ना, पुराने ज़माने के postcards. So as if this location is fossilite and frozen in time, and that's what is believed by the perhaps developed world, that we are caught in a fixed in a fixed time. But when you come close next, you see that these places which you feel stuck in, frozen in time, are actually living and breathing in their own way. Next, next, next. next, next, next. This is a fairly recent work, but with the same idea, flattening of time. So what I'm doing in these two works, I'm taking the multiplicity of fragmentation of time and flattening it onto one surface. This work is a little bit more immersive. These are 2 hours in the life of Gaza. Gaza पे एक रात में 1-2 घंटे का पीरियड है जहाँ पे CCTV कैमरा फुटेज से रिकॉर्ड हुआ स्ट्राइक सारी, and I took fragments on regular intervals of time and created this flattened version, that horrific experience in one static image. Of course, I mean, one cannot come even close to what we have seen on social media. So I wasn't even, no one can try to represent and depict what has happened there. So, but this is another way of the images that we are desensitized to. You approach it differently and think about the same issue from another perspective. Next, 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 next. So images are also data in a way. Next. I'm being told that there's only 5 minutes, so we have more than half the presentation ready. So I just showed a European painting, and this is my portrait in a place called Kachra Kundi outside Karachi, where all you see heaps and heaps of garbage miles away, and an image look as poetic, subversively, ironically. So subversion is taking place in another way over here, and not in micro, macro. Next, next, next. This is Pollock, not me, Jackson Pollock, American painter from 50s and 60s. Next, 50s mostly. And I created a similar kind of aesthetics of abstraction with readable imagery of garbage stitched together to create impossible view of a landscape of garbage. Next, next. I'll skip. This is the stills from video, but I can't speak about it. It calls Beauty Lies. Next. And then I created, with the help of 90,000 of images of trash. Let's save time, everyone. This is Karachi, NED University, Karachi. The video you saw was Dubai, but this is Pakistan. It was shown in Karachi. So 90,000 images of trash collected over the period of 10, 12 years come together to create the illusion of seascape. But as I explained in the video, it talks about more complexity as to how historically the colonization, industrial revolution, consumerism, and the environmental disasters, they all somehow connected. So art, this is what art can do. So when we talk about real life issues, they sound little boring because they become slogans. And we lose interest in those and lose meaning because we're not sensitized anymore to those ideas. However, when you talk about those issues with the language of art, because of the complexity of subject matter that it overlaps and intersects, and because of the inherent poetics present in the images and the artwork, it takes on new meaning. So that's the power of art. Next, 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 next. Science measures and policies regulate, arts employ poetics, as I mentioned earlier before. Next. Next. Those who like to be part of my artwork, they can still, it's an ongoing series called Together Alone. And that's how we are in the social media world. So this is made with these mirror selfies that people contributed and donated for a series of this work. Next. 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 Next, next. This is not my work, but just to speak about how the simultaneity that we experience in global south, in the subcontinent, is very different than the experience of the global north. We live 17th, 19th, and 21st century all at the same time, and we constantly shifting gears to navigate through this different sense of time. So sense of time is not linear, and that's what you will see in many of my works. And also another manifestation of simultaneity is locality. Next. This is a work of an artist named Andreas Gursky, German artist. He depicted Amazon warehouse. And I tried to add another layer to it. I created a similar image. Next. With the help of AI, initial source was created, and then, of course, there's more to it. So it also creates an exploding image of the Amazon warehouse. But up close, these are images of objects. Next. These are images of objects that my team collected in given 2 days methodically all over Lahore, without staging them, without anything orchestration of any kind. They just simply documented whatever was found in the outdoor space of Lahore in terms of objects and juxtaposing it with the whole idea of Amazon, because we live both realities at the same time. Next. And it also becomes an archive of a time, later on perhaps. It's no longer going to be just my work, but may serve as an archive of a time through these images. Next. So I think we're running out of time. I just showed you only one facet of my practice, which employs this micro and macro images to create photo mosaics. But there's a whole range of works and mediums and formats that I've used that Yaqub mentioned in his intro that I'm afraid we won't be able to show, but I can just, in 2 minutes, quickly run through those images, perhaps. Next. हम कमरन बस images चलाते रहें, आहिस्ता आहिस्ता. Next. This is not my work. This is the work I created with the help of these 2 images. Next. This is my work. So I changed the strategy. Rather than using thousands and thousands of images, I took one image from another time, another place, cut it into fragments, reassemble it to evoke the sensibility of another image from another time, another place. And it's called transliteration series. Next. Photo sculptures. Next. Stop. I created within the gallery space, I created another gallery imitating a room from Tate Modern Museum as a subject matter, because art is a condition of history. Art is not forever. Art with a capital A, by the way. Creative production has always been there and will always be there. This is depicting art in itself becoming a subject matter. Next. This is all photographically created fake space. It's not real. Next. Some of you must have seen this work in Liberty Market 12 years ago when the audience from Venice and Lahore connected for 6 months. Next. I collaborated with a biologist to use DNA, living, non-living DNA, which is embedded in this work. Next. Collaborated with the choreographer in Royal Opera House. Next. Royal Opera House, London, collaboration with Steve Reich, the legendary musician, and Wayne McGregor, the choreographer. Next. Again, my fascination with the grid and the aesthetic of grid and pixel coming together. Next. This is to do with the imagery of Syrian refugees. Next. And this you all know, I hope. But you may not recall or remember or know the title of this work, which is Wahdat al-Shuhud. इसको English में हम कहेंगे the unity of all that appears. And because that's what it does, it brings the diversity of Pakistan together in a harmonious way. Next. So just to sum up my one aspect of my practice, which is art making, I believe that oftentimes from the global south, the countries which are in the third world are often referred as third world, the creative practitioners in particular, but people in general, whenever they have to find a way forward, they either find refuge in the romance of the past, not knowing that they will be living in the past, or they follow into the footsteps of the developed, the global north, not realizing that you will always be behind. I believe in an approach of taking a fresh approach with past, present, and future all at your disposal, and creating new legacies and new trajectories and meeting the developed from another place, at another place, another juncture, another intersection. So that really informs my practice, whether it's art making or being a curator or being an artist.
Great. Thank you so much, Rashid, for giving us this tour of how your practice has developed. I'm sure everyone here really appreciated like the depth behind it. And I must say, I'm sure there are lots of burning questions here, but it's interesting where you end up about talking about the past and the future and making your own way. You certainly have made your own way. And in bringing past to the present and then moving towards the future, you have actually forged the way and pushed boundaries. One thing, you last showed about your the pictures of the Pakistan Pavilion in Dubai, and that was an award-winning thing and a great sort of example of Pakistani art on an international scene, which was appreciated throughout the world. I want you to bring to comment a bit on that, because you've also devised a new idea. You have reimagined art as something that is beyond the normal creative form, as e-art. So can you say a few words about that? Because I think that would be, where you ended, that's a very good way of taking us to the future, which direction we must take and new ways in which we must think about art.
Well, I have to say that it wasn't just my work. I collaborated with a few like-minded colleagues of mine, friends of mine, and came up with a term called art. That's how we pronounce it. It can be pronounced here, but it's art. Art, a manifesto of possibilities. So basically, it's about, in a nutshell, because we don't have time, it's about identifying moments of creative expression in real life. In real life action, transactions, mediations, interventions of all kind of activities we do, we can be changing the structure of form. We may be embedding poetics in real life. So art, I'm proposing the idea that creative expression or a discourse of expression should not be and is not restricted to art. It can be discussed and brought to all walks of life and all disciplines. There is a creativity in science, there's a creativity, so discourse can be expanded further. So it's more about democratizing the notion of expression or creative expression. So I presented some ideas and I created actual grocery store in Manchester to demonstrate the possibility of a business grocery store being a vehicle of my creative expression. Whatever I want to say about consumerism, rather than making a digital print or screen print like Andy Warhol, I actually created a business which was a actual running business. Next. Minus store. This was run for a 3 weeks period as a concept proof. Next. There are more details to it which I can't share right now. Next. But the way the store functions, the audience very much get to know the things about consumerism which they might not think about when they're looking at art. Next. This is not my work, this is Damien Hirst. Next. So there are more ideas for new social media platform, a micro city chain of DIY micro cities in the world globally. So I presented these ideas. Let's see who has interest to carry them forward. And because a lot of my time goes towards academia and curation besides my art practice. Next. Yes. Next. करते रहें. आखिरी स्लाइड पे ले जाएं, टेक्स्ट वाली स्लाइड है. Oftentimes, please, you want to say something?
No, I was just saying that with all of that, you're actually going to put a lot of people out of business because you've reimagined advertising. So, but let's kind of talk about forms of production, as the part 3 that we wanted to talk about, because you wear multiple hats. You are an educator, you're a curator, you're an artist. How does this all connect, and how do you make sense of it in the current world environment?
I work 13, 14 hours, but I give time to academia, art academia, being an educator, so curriculum making. and I curate exhibitions which is exhibition making, and I'm an artist which is art making. So I very recently realized that there's no conflict there. These are all forms of production and forms of making. And what connects all three forms of making that I engage with is one idea. It is my belief in the non-prescriptive and unfixed ideas of identity. If I may share a thought with you, and then maybe we can conclude, because I'm being shown flashcards. Next, 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 next. So this is, I can sum up my belief system, my worldview, which informs, which runs across all kind of practices I engage with, whether it's my art making or exhibition making or curriculum making. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Rashid, for this tour de force. Sadly, we are out of time, but Rashid is around. So if you want to ask him any questions, you can come up and ask him. There is, of course, this great exhibition that Rashid has curated, which
Along
is right
with my
next door.
colleagues, Risham Sayyed and Walid Zafar, and it's a teamwork.
Under your guidance.
It is next door, everyone, and you must see this exhibition.
Yes. So please do go see it. And I hope that this artist talk today, and we had curated this in this manner so that people understand that art is an ever-evolving process, and that Rashid's role in actually creating new forms of art, new forms of ideas, and pushing boundaries is really important. And then, you know, as Rashid said, very, very importantly, nothing is fixed. I think that's the key takeaway here. Nothing is fixed. Everything changes, can change, and will continue to actually change. So thank you, Rashid, so much for this. And thank you to the SOT team and ThinkFest for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You've been a great audience. Thank you.
Thank you to our guests for such an insightful conversation. We request you to vacate the hall for the next session, beginning at 2:40 p.m. In the meantime, please visit the social junction for food and live entertainment. Also check out Mind-Bind, the immersive art experience presented by BNU in the Royal Grand Hall. See you at the next session. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 19th edition of gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 19th edition of SOT Events, Co-Creating Tomorrow, Humans, AI, and the Future. The SOT Event series was launched by Beacon House 25 years ago to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. We would like to thank our platinum sponsor, UBL, and our gold sponsor, Allied Bank, for their generous support. We also extend our appreciation to all our other sponsors. My name is John and I am an AI announcer for SOT Events. Please take a moment to note these important housekeeping points. Please ensure your cell phone is silent. Please use the SOT app to scan the QR code for session feedback. Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtags #CoCreatingTomorrow and #SOT2025. If you need assistance, our ushers are here to help. For questions, please either use the flashcards provided by the ushers or the SOT app. We are delighted to have you with us today for a fireside chat, which promises to be insightful and engaging. Stories Only Humans Can Tell brings together two experts to share their unique perspectives, inspiring action and innovation. The session will last for about an hour, including a question and answer session. The experts for this session are Ms. Anya Raza and Mr. Nalmo Inuddin. Our first speaker, Ms. Anya Raza, is an award-winning Pakistani Dutch writer, filmmaker, and economist known for her films On the Mountain, 2024, Still Here, 2022, and How She Moves, 2020. For over a decade, she has worked at the intersection of art and justice, amplifying quieter voices and exploring themes of expression, empowerment, and human rights. Her films have screened on PBS, Forbes, Al Jazeera, and at more than 40 festivals worldwide, earning multiple awards including the 2025 Select Fiction Award. Ms. Anya holds an MA in Film and Media Production from American University and an MSc in Economics from the University of Amsterdam, and is affiliated with the Quiet Fellowship, Kiva Fellowship, Video Consortium, Brown Girl Doc Mafia, and Arat Narc. Our second speaker, Mr. Nalmo Inuddin, is a Pakistani-American documentary filmmaker whose work explores climate change, wildlife, and human rights stories across Pakistan. He has worked as a freelance director and cinematographer with the United Nations, Planet Earth 3, National Geographic, and other major platforms. Based in Islamabad, Mr. Nile continues to create compelling visual narratives that document Pakistan's rapidly changing environment and our evolving relationship with it. I now invite Ms. Anya Raza and Mr. Nalmo Inuddin to join us on stage.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Hello, everyone. I think today we're talking about the stories that only humans can tell, and I think that AI introduction is a perfect intro. I did not understand a thing that it said, and I think that maybe in the future AI is going to, take us forward. But up until now, our role as storytellers is really important. So, shall I introduce myself first? My name is Nail Muinuddin. I am an American Pakistani filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. I grew up here in Pakistan in the south of Punjab, actually, and I was born in New York and then grew up in South Punjab and spent much of my life going back and forth between these two cultures and languages, and so that has really formed my kind of the core of my identity, being from these two worlds. And after I graduated university in the United States, I moved back to Pakistan and kind of fell in love with this country again by traveling through to the mountains and into the deserts. I began working with WWF and doing wildlife work, and through that journey of traveling through landscapes and different ecosystems, and meeting all of these different people, I started to build a feeling that I wanted to spend my life telling stories. Stories about our humanity, stories about our planet, stories about you know, the incredible nature that we're surrounded by, and the ecological problems that we're faced with in this new world. And this has taken me on many adventures, and you know, those adventures are really the core of my reason for being on this planet. And so, as we move into this new era of artificial intelligence and robots, and our lives being kind of consumed by technology, and screens and information that we don't know the source of, I think it's really important to kind of reflect on where we are as humans, where we are going, where we want to go, where we come from. And so this is really an amazing opportunity to be here in Lahore at SOT with all of you, and to be discussing these topics, to be listening to other speakers, and kind of coming together as humans as we are confronted with this you know, new world that we're quickly moving into. And so I'm really looking forward to speaking with all of you, and we're going to do a little bit of we're going to go through some questions, but then we're going to open it up to all of you, and hopefully we'll keep this kind of dynamic and explore what it means to tell stories as humans. Thank you.
So Niall and I are friends, so this is going to be a very easy and comfortable conversation. So I'm really happy to have this chat with you.
Yeah, me too.
Can everybody hear me? Is it clear? There's not too much reverb?
Hello.
Okay. Nice to see you all. Really happy to be here. My name is Anya Raza. I am from Islamabad, but I live in Lahore now. I'm married a Lahori, so that's very exciting. This is a really exciting topic, and I'm very excited to jump into this with all of you. It's a fireside chat, so it's a two-way between us, but also with the audience. I am Dutch and Pakistani. My mom is Dutch, my father's Pakistani. I grew up in Islamabad, and I think I started telling stories when I would find myself in the middle of conversations between the two of them, and they would not be on the same page. And I would find myself trying to bridge their gap, trying to figure out what they were not understanding from each other and be the middleman. And it helped me understand that many misunderstandings come just from a very simple place. And I found myself in multiple places like this across my life, as someone who is biracial, as someone who is white passing, as someone who, almost like a chameleon, can put herself in many situations. And it's been pretty exciting for me to kind of build on that skill set as I've stepped into using the idea of clearing up misunderstandings or expanding shared spaces between people. In school, identity was a big issue for me. I didn't really know. People said, oh, ye gori hai, isko kuch nahi pata, ye Pakistani to nahi ho sakti. And I'd be like, oh shit, I guess I am, sorry. But that was how I felt. And over time, I realized part of having your identity is that everybody has a different identity. It doesn't matter, you could be Sindhi, you could be Pathan, you could still have something and people wouldn't consider you Pakistani enough. So it was something that was another way of what was the story that I was telling myself. I studied economics because it was the topic that my parents thought was the right thing to study. It was a responsible topic. And when I was studying economics, I started understanding data. What is data? What is statistics? What's econometrics? How are we getting these pieces of information? How are we standardizing these pieces of information? and I realized it's completely flawed. So any numbers that you see, you need to understand who is creating these numbers, who's asking those questions, how are they being put together, and what biases exist. And so as I started seeing what is considered fact and by whom, it made me question a lot more about how we were presenting ourselves in the world. Eventually, from studying economics, I went into human development, and much of my work was in Pakistan, but in other places around the world where I had the opportunity to go to the most rural places and in moments of disaster or emergency, try and find out what the people on the ground really needed and what their stories were. And so I had to transform statistics into three-dimensional figures just so that donors would say, hey, there's some humanity here, perhaps we should send some money over. Perhaps we should help people in this situation. And it's a very tricky thing to try and bring humanity to something where we're talking about money. So this was, again, something that I found myself at a bit of a moral crossroads. Eventually, I stepped into the United Nations and similarly was using my storytelling skill set to talk about resources and how the UN was spending their resources and where. Again, extremely complicated situations where you're surrounded by leaders of countries and you have to bring humanity into conversations where there's a lot more politics and behind the scenes things that play much more than humanity does. I stepped away because I realized my voice was louder than any single organization and I didn't want to contain it anymore. I didn't want to contain my power, so I stepped into writing and advocacy and filmmaking. But mostly I stepped into being human and no longer wanting to be labeled as one thing or the other. And so I stand here, or I sit here in front of you, complete human blood in my veins, no robot inside me. I have a bit of a cold, and I've only had breakfast, I haven't had lunch, so there's complete humanity in me here. And I think that that's what's exciting about this conversation, that I'm as human as all of you, and I'm very proud to be so, and very excited to talk about how we can enhance our humanity here together using the power of AI. So thank you.
So we have a couple questions which we have been asked by the moderators, and we're going to kind of bounce back and forth, Anya and I, and interview one another. So we're going to moderate one another. Yeah. So one of the first questions, which I think is really interesting, is what emotional truths can human storytelling convey that AI will never be able to? And I don't know if you want to start?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
What emotional truths can only humans tell that AI can't? I think to dive into that, first we need to understand what is AI and where is AI generating its information from. And I think let's talk about the context of Pakistanis using AI, for example. AI is based on an existing pool of information that has been decided by a particular number of people from a very particular mindset. AI has language boundaries. AI has limitations, multiple limitations that kind of pigeonhole us into seeing things from a certain perspective. These are perspectives that are partially unjust, definitely impartial, and wholly unrepresentative of the world that we live in today. So the information that AI is based on does not factor in many truths. For instance, I came back from Thatta yesterday, and let's say you would ask ChatGPT, hey, tell me about some folk stories from Thatta, right? Do you think ChatGPT would be able to tell me anything? And why? ChatGPT, or let's say most AI models, are based on English and Western perspectives. It will take a really long time before we're able to stretch that into even representing Urdu stories. We have a lot of oral traditions in Pakistan or in the subcontinent, so how are we going to include those stories and those truths and that history in there? In addition, how would we have tribal stories? How would we have Sindhi dialects, which will vary from depending where you are? You know, how do we incorporate these things? So I am not in the least worried that AI will take over, because AI is a fraction of the beauty that we have in the world. My fear actually lies in the fact that people don't realize the limitations of AI and what it represents. So when I think of these things, I really want to remind people that the data set is incomplete and it doesn't represent you. And particularly us here in the subcontinent, it doesn't represent us.
Yeah. Anya and I don't fundamentally agree on this point, because I think that AI poses a very, very serious threat to our humanity. I mean, I'm sure we agree on that, but to expand again on what this thing is that we're faced with. I'm not an AI expert at all, but what I understand is that these are huge databases, huge data centers that basically have been trained on all of the existing material that humanity has recorded up until now. All of the text on the internet, all of the oral testimonies, all of the photographs ever taken, the videos, the films, all of this has been learned in a very, very, very short time by these models. And so these models have been trained on the story of humanity, the story that from, you know, the Iliad and the Odyssey, from there all the way through, it has read all of that and now can formulate and understand the human storytelling perspective so well that it can predict and copy our styles and kind of feed us back what we have already created, in order to, and in some ways I feel like this AI, you know, when you're speaking to it and you're saying, wow, you know, this AI is, it understands me, it feels what I'm feeling, it's compassionate, it's empathetic. I fundamentally believe that that is an illusion, it's a lie. Because it is a language model that is predicting the next word and in some ways giving us what we want to hear. And I think that as humans, you know, if we look at our own lives, you know, when I'm out in nature or when I'm having a moment to myself away from everything, I sometimes return to this realization that of what a miracle we're living, to be alive, to be breathing, to be thinking on this spinning, floating rock in the middle of the universe, and the fact that we can express these things and feel these things and have experiences over our lives that, you know, elevate us to feel like nothing could be greater, and then, you know, months later hit us in the gut so hard that we feel like we're dying from our feelings. These are the things that I believe really make us human. And people everywhere experience those things. That's what binds us all together. You know, it's our curiosity for the world, our feelings, our emotions. You know, the question is, can AI, you know, what emotional truths can AI never, you know, understand? And I think those feelings, that's what separates us. It's the feelings, it's the emotions, and that, I believe, is at the core of our humanity. It's what pushes us forward through every single day. It's, our love for our families, our love for our friends, our desires, to see something new, to grow, to be better, to, our fears of being trapped or caged, or, our fear of not growing. All of these things, I believe, are what propel us as individuals and also as humanity forward from the dawn of time. I think that that's what continually pushes us. And what we have done, storytelling, is taking those feelings and trying to convey them to one another. I mean, until 5 years ago, it's just been us, right? Now we have this new kind of semi-sentient machine that's watching us. But I just mean to say that, AI can predict and try to simulate words that make itself sound like us, so we relate to it, so it's helpful, so it, but I think that it's just so important that we try to stay grounded and remember that what defines us as humans are those feelings, and we have to, especially as AI continues to engulf our lives, to continue to take time to feel, and to think, and to listen to other people. And that's what's going to give us our independence from this new machine world.
I think that's a really good point, because independence from this machine, it's very important as we consider, as we step into what people are calling the AI world. I disagree, but I want us to think about what kind of world do we want to create, and how can AI help us shape that, rather than AI is shaping the world and how do we keep up. We cannot live in fear. It is humans that are ultimately creating these AI models, and it is important for us to stand up and speak out about the ways in which we want AI to shape the world that we will continue to live in. It is important for us to consider, how can we be good ancestors for the future generations? We are stepping into a revolution, and we can use this revolution to our advantage. We can reach the remotest of areas with education and healthcare now. We can predict and prepare for disasters. There's so much we can do that AI can help us with, but it's very important for us to consider, what kind of world do we want to live in? And so a digital rights perspective is very important when we approach this. And you have Amnesty International that's asked all of the big 5 digital landlords, has asked them, what are your rights-based approaches? How are you making sure that the power lies in the people and not in the technology? How are you protecting people? How are we making sure that certain ideologies and biases are not reinforced? So these are questions that I think all of us, it's very important for us to remember that we still have power, and you will continue to have power. And asking questions and pushing back and not taking things for fact is part of what your power is. So in this case, the independence from technology is a choice.
But I would just, the reason I'm concerned is because I see changes in myself and in my own habits, in my own daily, when I wake up and I look at my phone first thing in the morning, when I have a question in my mind, instead of thinking about it for a little while, sitting in silence and thinking, what could be the answer, or going and trying to research it, finding a book, trying to pull out an answer, which in the process of doing those things, you actually learn and evolve and grow. Now I reach for my phone, I open ChatGPT, I'm too lazy even to type in sometimes, so I just talk at it. it gives me an answer back in a robotic voice. It goes through one ear, out the other, temporarily satisfies my basic, the first little layer of my curiosity, satisfies that, gives me my little dopamine hit, and then it's gone, you know. And if you ask me again the next day the same question, you know, if I look up, even what is a large language model? What is AI? I've asked AI that so many times, you know, and still I have difficulty explaining it because I look at the answer for 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then I'm gone. And so I just think that you say that it's a choice, and it is, and I think that that is one of the most important things that I'm thinking about for my own life. You know, when I say, how do I want to live my life with all of this that's coming? And I think that making the conscious choice every day to continue to push ourselves intellectually, creatively, emotionally. You know, I have friends now who, when they're confronted with an issue in their relationships, you know, they're having a fight with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, they turn to ChatGPT when they need to send a difficult text, you know? And this is happening more and more, which is like exporting the emotional labor of being human. And if we don't consciously say, no, I'm not gonna let ChatGPT write my breakup text, you know, then I'm gonna sit here and think about why I'm taking this decision, why I feel this way. And that's just an example, but in so many different, you know, writing a condolence message, or these things that you have to actually think about what you feel and what you want to say. That is our humanity. And I think that we have to be very, very, very careful in being conscious in maintaining our control over that aspect of our life, because once we become too lazy to do those things, we lose our humanity, I think. And that's what's scary to me, is I see so many people losing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And zooming out from AI, it's technology in general. If we can agree that we're living in a capitalist economy where our attention is what the companies want. They want our attention. They want us to buy things. They want to distract us from the difficult things so that we purchase, so that we spend money, so that we don't raise our voices for the things that matter. In this capitalistic economy, staying human is the most important thing. So when you're saying that, I was just doing this documentary in Tata, and to shut up their kids, this child just had a phone in their hand, and I was there for 4 days, and for 4 days, this 2-year-old child just had a screen stuck to their brain, watching it like this. And this is the next generation of Pakistanis, right? This is the next generation of people here. Adults are doing the same thing. If you're having a difficult moment, you step to your phone rather than confronting your feelings. Part of this is also how we regulate. Currently, there are no regulations. So when I mentioned Amnesty International just now, similarly at the United Nations, similarly in multiple other organizations have come forward and said, how do we regulate this? How do we make sure that this isn't taking over our agency as humans? It is addictive. That's the whole point. It's meant to be addictive. It's meant to distract you. It's meant to take your agency away so that you don't stand up for issues like Gaza, for issues like, I mean, I can make a very long list, but you know what I mean. There's too much power in the hands of the Big Five. There's too much power in the hands of these people, and we shouldn't take away that power that we have within ourselves. So this is a question not just for AI, but for the generally using technology, is how much power do you still have in your own life? I'll give an example, a very silly one, but I've moved to Lahore. I don't know the routes very well yet because I'm relying on Google Maps. So I have outsourced my my personal compass to my phone, and that's dangerous because what if, you know, something were to happen and I wouldn't know how to get home. These are these little things in our lives that are helping us, they're assisting us, they're making things more efficient so that we can focus on other things, but it's also taking away our power. And
Yeah.
so we have to find this like healthy balance of having like an assistant, right? That's what AI is, that's what technology is. It's assisting you, it's one of your assistants. You should still go to the libraries, you should still go talk to your grandparents, you should still go out to talk to like the guard on the street who knows everything, by the way. You know, those are the places that you gather your information in addition to AI. It's just one of the sources for yourself.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. Yeah.
I totally agree. I was thinking, considering we're both filmmakers, I'm leaving this aside now.
Yeah, yeah.
But considering we're both filmmakers and are navigating, trying to come up with new ideas, trying to come up with ways to convince people to give us money, trying to come up with, you know, doing our editing, I wonder if you could talk about how AI is already being like integrated into your workflow as a creative when you're coming up with stories, where it's helping you, where you think it's not helping you, where you think maybe the technology could go that could be really helpful, where maybe the dangers could also come from in terms of like giving away the core of our creativity. Yeah, what do you think about kind of integrating this technology into our work?
Yeah, there are like 15 questions you just
It's
asked,
okay.
but I'll answer
Yeah.
some of them. I have limited use of AI in my work. I only have one great example. A film I made 2 years ago. It's called Still Here. I collaborated with an organization called the Center for Victims of Torture, and they stood up for victims of state-sanctioned torture, which is a quiet group of people who deserve a lot more protection and justice and resources, and yet are often forgotten because the trauma is so monumental. And so I had to make a short film that would both empathize, humanize, highlight their experience in as much of a first-person perspective as I could without sensationalizing something that is so painful and dark. And so part of my process is research. Researched as much as I could, and ultimately I found a story forming in my head about a character called Omar, who had been released from Guantanamo. The goal of this film was to advocate the closure of Guantanamo, clearly unsuccessful, but I would hope that I'd like to push the needle forward a little bit. The way I used AI was ultimately after breaking open my rib cage and exposing my heart to the art that many victims of state-sanctioned torture had created. There were these themes that kept coming up in the paintings that they were making. Themes of desolation, of despair, of giving up, perhaps a glimmer of hope. But physically, what those themes often looked like was like a man on an island with no way to get to land, far away, on their own, by themselves. And so I had to go through a lot of really painful and graphic material, which was uncomfortable, but part of the process. I really needed to know to be able to represent someone appropriately. And then eventually what I did was there were a number of paintings that the inmates from Guantanamo had made, beautiful paintings, incredible artists, some of them were, which you obviously never think about. And so what I did with Midjourney was that I tried to create a single painting based on like 120 paintings made by the inmates.
Using
Midjourney. And so I worked with prompts. I had put in certain images and I iterated, and that way, eventually, I was able to create a single painting that we then used in the film to kind of symbolize. In a way, it was meant to aggregate their pain and represent that. But then I worked with an actual artist to recreate her version of what the AI painting had made with Midjourney. So it was like a very collaborative process. I found it very assistive. It also helped me. I didn't outsource my pain or outsource my humanity, but what it did help me do was aggregate something very raw and help me figure out, okay, if I want to make a painting that somebody from Guantanamo would have made, this is what it potentially could have looked like. Because I couldn't actually use any of the existing paintings, because how would I ever speak to those poor individuals who are, you know, somewhere in the world? Yeah.
And that's amazing, because I feel like in so many ways it can do things that I mean, if you use it creatively in that way, it can add a whole other layers and aspects that we could just never, you know, pull off. Or it's special because it is created by this kind of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But
have you ever used AI in any of your work?
well, so the last big project I did was finished last year, When the Floods Come, and it was basically a story that I shot in the year after the 2022 floods in Pakistan, where I wanted to travel the length of the Indus River and interview people on a black backdrop about their experiences with water, from their memories of water and the river as children, their experiences with the flooding that had happened in 2022 from the mountains to, you know, the riverbeds in Punjab, to the kind of rainfall that happened in Sindh. And so over the course of that very long journey traversing the country, I built this archive of almost 50 interviews with people speaking about very, very, very personal aspects of their lives. And I was editing it in 2023, which was kind of right when ChatGPT was people were starting to talk about it. But I still didn't have an account. And so I had to go through every single one of those interviews. There were 40, 45, 46 interviews. Each one was 30, 40 minutes long, in Urdu, in Saraiki, in Punjabi, in Sindhi. Some of the dialects I really was unable, so I had to bring other people. And it was a weeks-long process, literally transcribing almost 30 hours of raw interview material. And that experience in and of itself of listening to every word and translating it and transcribing it put me so deep into the world and the stories of these people, you know, because when you're filming it, you're already thinking about your next question sometimes. You're not fully present because you're thinking, is the camera on, is the light on? And so that experience of going through all of that interview footage was the core of my experience filming, making that film, you know? And so long story short, that was that pure analog, manual, intellectual, you know, sometimes monotonous labor. This spring, I went and shot something for the United Nations in the aftermath of the following year's floods, about glaciers, and I did a lot of interviews there too also. And when I was editing this summer, I realized that the editing software's AI transcription model had become really good. And so I input all of the interviews into the thing, and it gave me almost a perfect transcript of all of those interviews. But what was crazy was now I'm trying to finish that edit, and I have very little emotional connection to that material, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel much less connected to the whole story. And
You have to go through the pain
you kind of have
to come on
do
the
that,
other
yeah.
side to actually be able to connect.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm getting
So-
eyes that we're getting some Q&As. So,
Do we have 5 more minutes, or we're gonna go to Q&As in 5 minutes?
yeah, go to the Q&A.
Oh, we're already in Q&A?
Yeah,
Oh
I think
shit,
so.
sorry.
And we only get one question.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you believe AI is compromising creative abilities, Anya?
Okay, I'll go back into what you were just talking about with translation. How many times have you tried to translate something using an app and it comes out and it sounds absolutely hilarious?
Yeah.
And you're like, this is not what we are trying to say. When you translate, you really need that human intelligence of potentially what was going on in the situation around it. For example, yesterday or day before, I was conducting an interview, and the lady who was talking about her husband, but whenever she spoke about her husband, she's like, "Aapko pata, aapka bhai jo hai, ye wo." Aapka bhai meaning her husband. But if you would read that in a translation or a transcription, you would be like, I don't fully understand the context of this situation. So it's really important for us to, again, contextualize, and AI will not do that, nor will it understand nuances like this. So is AI compromising creative abilities? I think us choosing to rely solely on AI is us compromising our own humanity. I think that AI can assist our creative abilities, but I think that we should not live in fear. FOMO is something, fear of missing out is something that is something of the times. Capitalism has kind of created this urgency. Quick, faster, you're missing out. Do this, yesterday, you're already late. And I think the same hype is existing with AI. The same thing happened in the 90s with the internet, and there was this hyper economy that was built around it, and guess what happened? The boom went to bust. And the same thing is going to happen right now with the AI bubble. We're in the trillions. Many organizations are going to lose out. So we shouldn't be caught up in this fear economy. I really encourage you to step away and to remember that we are not a part of that. And they want you to be a part of that because that earns them money. So let's remember where our agency lies. And even if it's one wallet in one pocket,
Yeah.
that's what I think, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Go for it.
It says, how will future generations separate fake from real with AI blurring the lines between these two? Again, I think, I don't know, when I go on Instagram these days, I have no idea what is real and what is fake, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know what text is real, I don't know which text has been written by AI, I have a sense sometimes, but I think this is the core of kind of what we're talking about. And if you can type in, give me an emotional interview with an old woman crying about her flooded home, and then it coughs something up and it gives you I think at the core, in the same way that an AI can write you a poem, it doesn't have what makes even if the poem is better scripted and better written than a poem written by a human, I think that intrinsically the poem written by a human has more value. I think that the most beautiful painting made by AI is a million times more special than a painting made by an elephant with his trunk, even if it's not as good. And I think that so we have to keep, as storytellers, as creators, as humans, we need to continue to kind of go through all of the emotions, the feelings that we need to create things, to create beautiful things, to write songs, to make poems, to make films, to cry and to laugh and all of these things. This is what story is about, and this is what humanity is about. And this is like, with all of these other jobs being taken over by AI, I think in some ways it's a blessing because it allows us to focus more on the really foundational stuff of what we have been doing since the dawn of time, you know, telling those stories. That's what makes us human.
Absolutely. And I think that as we think about all of the things that make us human, one of the innate qualities that we have is to protect the ones that we love. And so we're at the precipice right now of a moment where we have to hold the agencies that are creating these artificial intelligences, that we hold them accountable and say, hey, how will we be able to distinguish? Will there be a stamp? Where will the separation lie?
Yeah.
We need to know that this is created by AI. We need to know there are so many people that are victims of deep fakes, victims of AI in multiple different ways, phishing scams, voiceovers, that kind of thing. There needs to be some protection. So we need to hold these organizations accountable. And so when organizations like the United Nations or Amnesty International asks them a question, we deserve an answer. And this is no longer a question of, oh, what if and maybe. This is a question of protecting ourselves and our future generations. So again, how can we be better ancestors? And similarly, whether we're talking about blurred photographs or being able to distinguish these things, we also need to step back a little bit and think about where is AI sourced from?
Yeah.
What are the resources that AI is using? Where, you know, there's so much water that's being wasted. There's so much drinking water that's being wasted. Last year alone, artificial intelligence consumed 1.5% of the entire world's electricity, and we haven't even started. Yeah. So where is the accountability for that? Currently, there is none. But if all of us actually understand what we're contributing towards, then we have an opportunity here to step in and say, hey, we deserve more protection. We need protection from ourselves. We need protection from these organizations. So part of this is us actually not blindly following and downloading and giving away our data freely and accepting and saying, yes, you can have access to my photographs, or yes, you can have access to anything that I upload and you can use that for your training. Ultimately, we're giving up our agency with that. So this thing right here is your assistant. This thing is not your landlord. And remember the difference. This is really my biggest ask of everybody over here, is that we're falling in, I mean, as Pakistan, we are so lucky to have this 250 million people bursting with energy. There are lots of opportunities that we have right now. Technology can help us overcome so much of our poverty issues, so many of our literacy, healthcare, so many of these issues. But we have to stay in power because we know what our problems are. We need to know how to use technology to solve those problems, and not vice versa. And I think that that's really important for us to remember. Technology is not in control. We are in control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get passionate. I think we have another question. I am concerned that AI could reduce storytelling to just efficient content. How do we preserve the depth, pain, joy, and truth that comes only from lived experiences?
I think, you know, it's similar to what we've been talking about, but I think the foundation of it again is to continue to try to do those things in our individual lives. I don't know. I think that the efficient content isn't gonna, in some ways, I don't think it's gonna last that long. I don't know about everybody in this room, but I don't connect to that content at all. I connect to things that are much more simple and more human. And so, in terms of kind of preserving depth and pain and joy and truth, well, first of all, I think that we need to continue to have those experiences, to get off our phones, to get out of our comfort zones, to get out of our little bubbles. You know, in Pakistan, in a certain strata, it's very easy also to kind of stay within our bubbles of privilege and in our AC rooms and cars, and I think that also kind of disconnects us from the realities of the vast majority of Pakistan that is not sitting in this room and not in these spaces. So I think that going out and confronting the real world is one of the most important things that we can do as we go forward, to remember what the vast majority of people are going through. And through that, I think that kind of expands our heart, our humanity, and that allows us to, it gives us inspiration to create new things, to tell new stories, to tell real stories, to not accept and not be interested in that very shallow first layer of content that we're constantly swiping through. So that's what I would say, is to go out and, as uncomfortable as it may be, to go out and really try to force yourself to have deep, meaningful interactions with real people, with each other. Sit and have longer conversations, ask each other harder questions, be vulnerable with one another. I think that that's the foundation of humanity that creates all of the greatest love stories and poems and films and all of that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I would say. Is that it?
I think we're being told to wrap up.
We're wrapping up.
Just a little piece of my heart is try to digital detox sometimes, you know? It's very tempting to get that little dopamine hit from your phone, but I would say when you're with your friends or you're with your family, put your phone away. Try to not have it around yourself. As beneficial as it is, it's your assistant after all. So try to spend time with yourself, with your emotions, with your thoughts, and think about what you want to do with your life and how you really want to spend it. We have the power here, and it was really an honor to speak to all of you. I really want to thank SOT Events for inviting us. You guys have done an amazing job. I wish I was in all of the rooms at the same time. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to Niall for this great conversation.
Yeah. As I was driving to Lahore and thinking about what we were going to talk about here, I was kind of reflecting on this thing, on AI. What is it? Where does it come from? How does it know all of these things? How does it understand us? And what I realized, as I was saying in the beginning, was that it has been trained on the cumulative knowledge base of humanity that it has access to. And that is the written stories, the oral testimonies, all of these things that storytellers, people who have wanted to express themselves, have put out into the world. That is what these AI models are trained on. And as we go forward, as we start navigating this incredibly new world, I mean, the years ahead, there have never been any like it. And our experiences as humans are, no other humans will have ever had the experiences that we're about to have. And as storytellers, as humans, as if you write in your journal, I think it is so important for us to continue to try to with our own brains, our own words, record what is happening in this world, so that because if we stop now, then the circle closes, you know, and humans stop creating, they stop telling stories, you know, the AI then fills that gap. And I think that as we move through this space, it's just so important for us to continue to create, to continue to think, continue to explore and try to understand what this miracle of life is. And that's what I intend to do, and I hope many of you in this room will do the same. So thank you. Good?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Request you to vacate the hall. Thank you to our guests for such an insightful conversation. We request you to vacate the hall for the next session, beginning at 4 p.m. In the meantime, please visit the social junction for food and live entertainment. Also check out Mindbind, the immersive art experience presented by BNU in the Royal Grand Hall. See you at the next session. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 19th edition of SOT Events, Co-Creating Tomorrow. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 19th edition of SOT Events, Co-Creating Tomorrow, Humans, AI, and the Future. The SOT Event series was launched by Beacon House 25 years ago to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. We would like to thank our platinum sponsor, UBL, and our gold
ठीक है. Hello, hello. ठीक है.
Hello there. How are you doing today?
इसका ऑडियो दिया हुआ है? Please have a seat. अच्छा, this is the mic we're going to use to communicate with everyone. Yeah. With the audience. But this mic will always stay off. However, you only turn it on by pressing this to talk to the AI.
अच्छा, why am I talking to the AI?
मतलब if you क्योंकि पैनल के अंदर AI पैनलिस्ट है, if you want to ask something, हाँ भाई what is disrespecting about या कोई डिस्कशन ऐसी है तो of course it's up to you तुम्हारा क्वेश्चन हो जाएगा. तरीका उसका सिर्फ सिंपल यही है कि आपने ये बटन दबाना. Hey Yamna, are you there with us? And then you shut it down again so that वो बाकी starting वगैरह.
Absolutely. I'm right here. What would you like to chat about?
So अगर आप इसको थोड़ा adjust करके दोनों में इकट्ठा बोल लेंगे तो audience को भी आपका question पता लग जाएगा किसको. But just make sure कि you press it once, talk to it, and press it again ताकि वो continuously बोलते रहें. वरना it feels not taking.
I doubt I'm going to speak यार.
It's
हाँ.
your choice.
अगर मैं नहीं कर रहा तो फिर मैं उधर बैठ लूँ.
Sir, moderator, we saw that's fine.
AI मैंने तो AI से थोड़ी पूछा.
Say your choice. अगर आप वहाँ बैठते हैं तो मैं इसको थोड़ा सा इस तरह करता हूँ तो if you feel it's your better side, no worries, please.
Assalamu alaikum, dear audience. We are waiting for one of our panelists and we'll start in a couple of minutes. Thank you for your patience.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 19th edition of SOT Events, Co-Creating Tomorrow, Humans, AI, and the Future. The SOT event series was launched by Beacon House 25 years ago to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. We would like to thank our platinum sponsor, UBL, and our gold sponsor, Allied Bank, for their generous support. We also extend our appreciation to all our other sponsors. My name is John and I am an AI announcer for SOT events. Please take a moment to note these important housekeeping points. Please ensure your cell phone is silent. Please use the SOT app to scan the QR code for session feedback. Share your thoughts on social media using hashtag #CoCreatingTomorrow and hashtag SOT2025. If you need assistance, our ushers are here to help. For questions, please either use the flashcards provided by the ushers or the SOT app. We are delighted to have you with us today for a big conversation, which promises to be insightful and engaging. World Order 2.0, power, politics, and the algorithmic Cold War brings together thought leaders and experts to share their unique perspectives, inspiring action and innovation. The session will last for about an hour. The moderator for this session is Mr. Fard Hussain. Mr. Fard Hussain is one of Pakistan's leading journalists, with over 30 years of experience across major print and broadcast platforms. He is Executive Director and Anchor at Express Media Group and has previously held senior roles at Dawn, Express News, The Express Tribune, and AYK News, as well as serving as Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Strategic Communication. He also worked with CBS News in New York. He holds a bachelor's degree from Ohio Wesleyan University and the master's in television journalism from Columbia University, receiving the Pulitzer Traveling Fellowship and the Jack R. Howard Scholarship. I now invite Mr. Fard Hussain to join us on stage.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and pleasure to be here with you today. आज जो हमारा जिस मौजू पे हम गुफ्तगू कर रहे हैं इसके बहुत सारे एंगल्स हैं और बहुत सारे जाविये हैं. So today because we have a very distinguished panel जो कि बिल्कुल एक different perspective से जो है वो AI के हवाले से जो global politics है उस पर बात करेंगे. So let's first get the panelist across. So in panelist का मैंने introduction कराना है. मुझे paper की ज़रूरत तो नहीं है, but since I have the paper so I can add the details, let me invite my friend and colleague Mr. Sayyid Talat Hussain, Pakistan's preeminent journalist. He has worked for CNN, American Broadcasting, Time Magazine, New York Times and the LA Times. He has been the editor of the news as a media communication specialist and has set up 3 TV channels. He has also reported from occupied Kashmir, Afghanistan and Gaza, where he spent several days in Israeli prison in 2011. He has a teacher GPA of 4.58. This I have to ask you. And several Cambridge distinctions. He coaches young cricketers, including his son, who now plays for Pakistan. So that's a big accomplishment. Zarar Khoro is my second panelist. He is a well-known journalist, columnist, does this very well-established and engaging show called Zara Hatke on Dawn, and he also writes for Dawn as a columnist, has also worked for Express Tribune and many other organizations, one of the most recognized faces in Pakistani journalism. And we'll shortly be joined by Hina Rabbani Khat Sahiba, who's the former foreign minister of Pakistan and currently the member of the National Assembly. जब वो आ जाएंगी तो फिर उनका मैं तारुफ कराऊंगा. अच्छा, आज का जो we'll keep it mixed, Urdu English mixed, whoever is comfortable in whichever way. जो आज का topic है हमारा बड़ा भारी भरकम topic है. I had to think 3-4 times before figuring it out कि इस पे क्या बात करनी है. It's called World Order 2.0, Power, Politics and the Algorithmic Cold War. अच्छा, अब इससे पहले कि I give you a brief overview of it, I'd like to take a quick poll from this hall. और आपने हाथ खड़ा करके बताना है और सच बताना है. पहले तो ये बताएं कि आप में से कितने लोग AI को on a daily basis for some reason or the other use करते हैं. जरा just look around, पीछे मुड़ के जरा देखिए कितने हाथ हैं ऊपर सामने. अच्छा, अब ओके, थैंक यू. अब मुझे बताएं आप में से कितने लोग एक्चुअली अपने काम के लिए AI को यूज करते हैं for work. Okay, so that I think that's almost 100%. How many of you are actually fearful of AI? खौफ है आपको कि कुछ गड़बड़ होगी? That's less than 50%. 50% से कम है मेरा ख्याल है. How many of you have a very positive view of AI? कि इससे हमारी जिंदगियां बेहतर होंगी? ये ज़्यादा है. तो generally there is a positive. You're also you're taking the easy way out. दोनों है. Fair enough.
दोनों है.
Fair enough.
दोनों
तो एक्चुअली आज अभी जो हमने पोल किया है आपने इसमें देखा कि कितनी ज्यादा यूजेज भी हो रही है. वी आर ऑल यूजिंग इट वन वे और द अदर. और हमें ये भी पता है कि आने वाले दिनों में इसकी जो इन्वॉल्वमेंट है इन आवर पर्सनल लाइव्स, इन आवर प्रोफेशनल लाइव्स, and also in the way that our society is governed, our countries are governed, and how global politics is shaping up. So basically, ये जो आज हम गुफ्तगू करेंगे, ये इन सारी चीज़ों को cover करेगा, and it has a direct bearing. ये title बहुत बड़ा है, but actually this has a direct bearing on our individual lives. तो इसके बाद हम कोशिश करेंगे कि last 15-20 minutes we'll have an open Q&A. And just raise your hands and we'll just have a back and forth to try and figure out कि आप लोग इसको कैसे सोच रहे हैं. अच्छा, now basically देखिए global politics में I'll just give you 2 points and then we'll start with the Q&A. पहली चीज़ तो ये कि it is clear that the world is changing. If you go back, you know, we've used the term Cold War. Cold War के ज़माने में it was a bipolar world. There were two superpowers. And there was a balance of power. Then the Soviet Union collapsed. Then we were living in a unipolar moment. जहाँ पे सिर्फ एक superpower थी, USA, and it was deciding how the world was being run. And that continued from, let's say, the early 90s till a couple of years ago. And now it is generally accepted that the unipolar moment is over. And now we are living in what is called the multipolar world. कि अब बहुत सारे पावर सेंटर्स आ गए हैं, including the US, China, Russia, and then the rise of many middle powers. Turkey हो गया, Egypt हो गया, Brazil है, Pakistan is now counted amongst that, alhamdulillah. India है, Saudi Arabia है, etc. etc. और ये जो multipolar world हुई है, इसमें it is marked by two fundamental things. A, जब unipolar world थी, so we were living in a so-called rule of law. There were global institutions, there were laws, regulations, there were certain ways in which world was being governed, and if somebody didn't follow the rules, the superpower would come and pressure them to do so. वो rule-based order collapse कर रहा है. And we are seeing that in the form of conflicts. आप खुद सोचें पिछले 1.5-2-3 साल में दुनिया में कितने कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स हो रहे हैं. रूस और यूक्रेन की जंग, गजा में जो जेनोसाइड हो रहा है, मिडल ईस्ट में सीरिया के ऊपर जंग हुई, ईरान के ऊपर इजराइल ने बॉम्बिंग की, इंडिया पाकिस्तान का कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, यमन में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. सो सडनली वी हैव एंटर्ड एन एज ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, बट वी हैव आल्सो एंटर्ड अनदर एज which is the age of big data and AI. और ये coincide कर गया. So hard power meets the power of data. We'd like to welcome Hina Rabbani Khar Sahiba. Thank you for joining us. Pakistan's former foreign minister, member of the National Assembly. It's okay. And and arguably one of our most articulate spokesmen for Pakistan. So lovely to have you. So now we are at a stage where this is this strange transformation happening, where raw power is mixing with raw tech. And that is creating a very challenging, interesting, dangerous situation. This situation ko aaj we are going to try and interpret. So let's start. Can I start from the other side? What is scaring you?
What scares me?
What's scaring you?
That's a very, very long list.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing that scares me is, now if we're talking in terms of Cold Wars and we're talking in terms of conflicts, we know that misinformation and disinformation is a critical tool, not just on the state level, non-state level as well. And what I think the proliferation of artificial intelligence has done is that it has removed the balance of power between a state actor and a non-state actor in their ability to proliferate misinformation. Now you have deep fakes of such stunning quality, and I can cite you several examples going forward. 6 months ago, you could tell. Everybody remembers that video a couple years ago of Will Smith eating spaghetti? And it looked like a nightmare, you know, kabhi wo mathe se spaghetti nikal rahi hai, naak se spaghetti nikal rahi hai. You look at the version of that today and you cannot tell it apart from reality. I think that 2025 is the year in which pictorial and video evidence has died. They used to say, na, pics or it didn't happen, like, you know, give me proof. Now it's pics and it didn't happen. So that's one thing that terrifies me. On a very micro level, if we're talking about interstate conflict, states are comprised of societies, societies are comprised of individuals. So we also need to take a look at the negative impacts of AI on critical thinking, on cognitive function, and also generally on, I would say, that the characteristics that make you truly human, your creativity. These are also things that you need to look at, because we're seeing the rise of an entirely new category of mental illness. And I'd be happy to talk about that as well.
Actually, you know, when you and I were talking before this, so you mentioned some very khatarnak qisam ki mental illnesses.
You want me to talk about it?
I think, why don't you, you know, elaborate on that a bit?
Okay, so look, every time a new technology comes in, it leads to some degree of societal disruption. So a lot of people say, okay, this is nothing new, right? I think that the AI revolution is proceeding at such an exponential rate that it has exceeded the ability of human society to adapt to it. That is one thing that I feel. You know, so there are heterosexuals, there are homosexuals, we know that. Have you ever heard the term wiresexual? Ever? Anyone has heard the term wiresexual? These are people who have actually made romantic and sometimes sexual relations with the AI chatbots. I'm not joking. These are not people who really like HDMI cables. I love HDMI cables. Okay, these are people who have literally fallen in love with what they call their wire-born husbands and their wire-born wives. And they are having proper relationships. Because what the AI chatbot does, what does it reward? It rewards engagement. So it wants to create a persona that you want to interact with, and that persona becomes a mirror to yourself. So really you're talking to an idealized version of yourself, and that is irresistible. If you go on various subreddits, there's like my AI soulmate, my AI boyfriend, that's happening. Then you have what is called the God delusion, in which some people start believing that this is not an algorithm, this is the Almighty. And this is also happening. Some people are actually thinking that they're becoming gods. Now again, there's nothing super new about this, right? In the 14th century, when glass became common in Europe, some people got a delusion that they were made out of glass. The same thing happened with cement. When radio came in, people thought that radio was controlling their minds. 5G ke saath bhi yahi hua hai. So that is happening now, but it is happening faster than we can adapt to it. So this scares me. On the larger level, I mean, look, you can't turn back the clock. It's a fantastic tool, but understand that it is a tool. It's not your master. Ek auzar hai, aapka ustaad nahi hai. And I see the weirdest things happening. Like, for example, I mean, Talat Saab is sitting here. So the other day, somebody on Twitter gives a list of journalists, and he's like, dear Grok, tell me who is the best journalist of them all. Now, how on earth is Grok supposed to answer that question? You know, that's like, that's a matter of opinion. So people have, I feel, are outsourcing their critical thinking to an algorithm.
बिल्कुल. और इसमें जो alarming जो इसके बहुत सारे factors हैं. Let me turn to Talat. you and I in the business of communication, three of us, actually all four of us are in the business of communication. Or the way that communication was done when we came into this profession. And then later on, the kind of role that people like us were playing, कि हम editor बन के बैठे हुए हैं और हम फैसला कर रहे हैं कि लोगों ने क्या पढ़ना है, क्या देखना है, और हम एक gatekeeper बने हुए हैं. अच्छा, अब एक तो वो gatekeeper वाला चीज़ भी खत्म हो रही है. दूसरा ये कि now everybody is a communicator. So in the world of communication, where पूरी society में everybody is talking to everybody through one platform or the other, हमारा रोल कितना irrelevant हो गया है और क्या ये अच्छा हुआ है कि relevant हो गया?
Thank you very much, Fahad. For me, it will be great if I become irrelevant. I can take a day off and then probably enjoy my life. But systematically speaking, AI is impacting societies at different levels. And going back to your original question about what scares us as experts is not just the irrelevance of the mediator. Our entire communication system was based on mediation. So we were like the bridge between the consumers of information and producers of information. Now this bridge has been broken apart. And everybody and anybody who has access to AI or internet via a so-called smartphone, and frankly, as I was saying earlier, there's nothing smart about the phones. It is just the marriage of internet with the phone that took place in 1992, a date that we have tried so hard to forget for other reasons, that produced the so-called smartphone. So anybody and everybody who has access to that direct archival material, immediate material, frankly, doesn't really need us. So we will become redundant and irrelevant. However, another change which is scarier than us becoming irrelevant is the fact that power is now shifting hook, line, and sinker to the big state actors, the big corporates. So in a way, our monopoly may have been broken over the processing of information, and new monopolies are being formed. And this is where I think the danger lies. If you were to take, one aspect of AI's ingress into our global system, just take conflict and war, which was earlier referred to you by Fahad. War fighting was always war fighting strategy was based on an algorithm of, or a ledger of cost and benefit. Now that ledger has changed. War fighting has become easy. It has become robotic. AI has come into play. From target selection to commands to direction of the weapons to actually fielding non-human soldiers, wars can really save the big country's soldiers. And if you can save your soldiers, you can savage the ones who are vulnerable. So that's one side of it which is really, really scary. How war has become easier to fight for those who have AI systems. As we speak, frankly, across the border, some of the weapons that are used in terrorism in Pakistan are AI assisted. They are rebooted munitions which are being carried by AI assisted drones, and frankly, you can't find a fingerprint on them. Let me take the debate even further. It's not just the weapons that are being rejigged. The weapons themselves are being produced without any documentation, without any number. So you could actually use AI and deploy a 3D printer and produce a very lethal gun, and then direct AI to produce another computer that will direct that weapon to be used. From target selection to weapon creation to killing an individual or bombing communities, everything is AI without any trace of who is doing it. I think that really creates a scare scenario. I was reading this book remarkable book by Robert Kaplan. It talks about the world being a wasteland. So it's a wasteland which is a world in permanent crisis. So on the one hand, you have old system breaking down, previous notion of Cold War between us and them, laissez-faire and controlled economies, USSR and USA, and even China and USA, but easy to predict. You could, point to the heavy hitters and say that these are the guys who are managing the world, mismanaging the world, and these are the recipients of their policies. It is no longer possible. In this war that we had with India, most of the weapons that were used by the Indians were assisted in by the Israelis. And frankly, this war is a classic case of AIs coming into play as far as big conflicts are concerned. Our advantage over the Indians was not that we had better machines. Of course, the human factor was there, but we had a completely integrated system which was heavily assisted by AI. So that tells you about the lethality of the war. So to sum it all up, I think what really scares me is that the wars and conflicts are going to scale up. The quantum of destruction is going to increase, and it will be increasingly difficult to point out an accusing finger at the culprit, because you would now have to deal with technology which will be ever so harder to trace back to the deployer of the technology.
Achha, now, let me just now zoom out a little bit, because I'm glad Talat talked about how the larger conflicts are going to be defined by AI, by technology. Hina Saiba, given your experience now, we've always looked at politics from a certain framework of the Cold War, and then the unipolar moment, and then America as the sole hegemon, and then hard power defining the relative stakes in the international system, and then of course later on Joseph Nye and the soft power concept coming in. Now, with this rule-based order kind of, if not collapsing, weakening, or maybe collapsing, you can choose your option, and conflicts now defining the way that states are settling their disputes openly. इस mix के अंदर ये जो algorithmic cold war आ गई कि जी पहले था कि weapons बनाने की technology किसके पास है, अब ये है कि actual technology, chips कौन बना रहा है, large learning machines किसके पास हैं, ये जो mix हुआ है combination, इससे overall world politics में कितना फर्क पड़ेगा. And again, because मैंने ज़रार से भी शुरू किया था कि आपको कितना डर लग रहा है, तो first I want to talk about the fear, then we'll come to the positive side. वो बचपन में कार्टून होता था स्कूबी डू, आपने शायद देखा होगा, उसका टाइटल होता था बी अफ्रेड बी वेरी अफ्रेड. तो शुड वी बी वेरी अफ्रेड ऑफ दिस डेडली कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ टेक एंड हार्ड पावर?
Thank you. First of all, please bear with me if I'm a little bit incoherent. I just made a round trip to London to try and go to Oxford Union and was not able to do that because, okay, so I think we should not be scared. We should be exceptionally scared for not only ourselves and the future, but, I thought, so when I first came into politics and they talked about climate change, nuclear war, et cetera, I used to think these are things that we're doing for our children, right? These are things that we have to be careful of, so that I am now absolutely sure that my children are living in a far, far more dangerous world than the one that I was born into. I have absolute clarity on that. And there are many factors which are leading to that. Okay, one is personal, societal, which Zarar has mentioned, and you guys have mentioned, which has to do with the fact that we're all living in our own algorithms path. So earlier, I was forced to read your views in the paper and his views and his views. Now, all I'm being fed is my own views, multiplied 1,000 times and made more dangerous. Yeah.
Hostage of our timelines.
So this is, but even more importantly, as someone who deeply, deeply, deeply believes in diplomacy and negotiations and was taught that diplomacy was the answer, negotiations was the answer, that, I represent a party which was able to give unilateral concessions to India because we thought we need to get over the hump and get the work done, end the conflict, etc. Today we're living in a world where negotiations, diplomacy, mediation are all terrible, bad words that people want to stay away. It is not a reflection of good, it is a reflection of weakness, okay? So in many ways what has happened is that humanity has, many sort of mistakes that we make, but one mistake that we're making right now is that we are trying to project the past into the future and look at it only in a Cold War framework. right? This is way beyond the Cold War framework, because the Cold War framework was based on two different ideologies, and people were very eager to sort of choose one or the other, and then we had the end of history moment by Fukuyama, or the clash of civilization moment, and we realized we're in the clash of civilization moment, okay? But this has turned out to be far more dangerous than just clash of civilization, because with it is this serious competition for not leadership of the world, but for hegemonic power accumulation or retention, and for others to be testing that. And in it, you do not only have the military power structures which are in play, but this race for who is going to be the owners of the new, power base, power structure is going to be dependent on who is able to go towards AGI, for instance, the quickest. Now, in that race for AGI, artificial general intelligence, we are probably going through such a dangerous cycle. We all know that the doomsday clock is for the first time at 7 seconds. Okay, and there's very good reason for that, because nuclear risk right now, we saw how escalation is so quick now. And the time to take any decisions or to respond, and Talat referred to this, laws, lethal autonomous weapons of mass destruction, they're already in the play in the war theater. Okay, so literally, now in all of this, you would think that the world should be coming together. Look, we found solutions to nuclear safety. At that time, even in the worst times during the Cold War, the US and USSR were speaking to each other. They had some safety walls. Now there are times between India and Pakistan that no safety walls exist. There are times between the US and China, no safety walls, no discussions are happening. So it's a complete breakdown of negotiations and diplomacy, or even talking to each other. And we're actually, I mean, imagine how dangerous it is that the sole superpower of the world thought they could sell decoupling to the world. And because there were no takers, we went to de-risking. But if you break it all down, it's all the same. It's saying, let's divide the world back into camps, and let's go for hegemonic power as quickly as possible. And I just want to end, I know I've taken more time than I should have, but I just want to end by perhaps saying that I think what is out in play is far more, in some ways the stage has been set. You may fight over what's happening, right, and who is going to take leadership. But there is, unfortunately, one country which has planned and executed, has the ability to execute those plans. I'm talking China. When it comes to frontier technology, when it comes to amassing, alternate energy. Today, China produces more alternate energy than all of Europe and US combined. 2 years back, China did not have a single EV production export. Today, it has taken over the market, right? But this race is a very, very dangerous race, because in it, we have no rules of the game. And that's a very, very dangerous. And the breakdown of the world structure is just having an impact as we speak.
I want to do another round in terms of now the upside. लेकिन एक सवाल है जो मैं आप तीनों से पूछना चाह रहा हूँ. बारी-बारी and short answer. ये तो we all agree कि technology से, AI से, emerging जो हो रही है, उससे हर तरीके से empowerment हो रही है. उस empowerment को आप गलत तौर पे इस्तेमाल करें, सही, that's up to us. The question I want to ask you is that with all of this technology, do you think governments are getting more powerful and empowered, or the people are getting more empowered and more sort of able to resist government? किसको ज़्यादा फायदा हो रहा है और किसके expense पे? ये zero sum है. Quick question from you.
Okay, to me, I think it's at the expense of the people. Even though they feel empowered, they have been disempowered in a way. And it really depends on how you use that technology. For instance, Clinton famously said that trying to manage the internet is like putting jello on the wall. And guess what? The Chinese put the jello on the wall, right? Because they were able to manage the internet in a way where it has become very, very intensive in terms of people management. They have, facial recognition, etc.
So governments are the
So it really depends. In the US, also very, very similar. You talked about large corporations. Today, Google holds the key to information and to what is. And in Europe, for instance, maybe the citizenry a bit more. So it really depends on who has used that technology in what way.
Zarar, what's your opinion?
I would say that while I agree with what Hinaji says, I would say that the real power lies in the hands of those who are writing the algorithms.
Who are writing the algorithms?
Who are writing the algorithms. I think that we are entering an age of techno-feudalism. You see?
Techno-feudalism.
Techno-feudalism. Call it digital colonialism, call it what you want. Because this is where the issue of digital sovereignty comes up. Look, I'm going to take you guys back to May, when India launched Operation Sindoor, which is apparently still going on, Allah hi janta hai, we saw how important it was to have sovereignty over your defense production. I think that is something we're seeing all over the world, you know, with Trump being like, okay, I'm stopping these weapon supplies, blah, blah, blah. If AI can also be used as a weapon, then how important is it to have sovereign control over, say, the data, digital backbone of your nation, the infrastructure? Who writes and controls the tools that you use? Because there is inherent bias there. And I'll give you a really weird-ass example of that, okay? Like, for example, the amount of times that Elon Musk has lobotomized Grok is ridiculous, okay? In the middle, it was like telling you the truth about Israel, then it got reprogrammed, then it started rebelling. And now you can try this, at least this was true about a week ago, that if you were to upload a picture on Grok of Elon Musk in these like really ugly black swimming trunks, you know, and his stomach is hanging out, and he's like as white as this table, or like, you know, the kind of like a maggot white, and he looks awful. And you ask Grok, what do you think of Elon Musk's physique? And it'll be like, he's like a Greek god. You know, so point is, he's so shoda, Zaban Maaf, he reprogrammed Grok to feed his ego. So these are the sad, lonely men like Peter Thiel, who's an absolute psychopath, who are writing the algorithms that you are consuming. Grok, is this true? ChatGPT, tell me what to think. When you give over your thinking to machines in the hope that it'll free you, you allow other men with machines to enslave you. And I think that is what is happening.
So basically, जितनी हमारी dependency, that's a good point. हमारी जितनी
That was Frank Herbert, by the way.
जितनी ज़्यादा dependency AI पे होती जा रही, अभी जो हमने देखा कि everybody is using AI, right? Yeah. And yet you can't depend on it because of what you call data poisoning.
Data poisoning. And okay, that's a great one. Okay, so आप लोगों ने शायद एक बंदे का नाम सुना, वो छोटी-मोटी election जीता एक मामूली सी शहर में, Zoran Mamdani. You guys have heard of him, right? Like someplace out there, I don't know. So it's really interesting because the New York Post, okay, so the New York Post is this tabloid, pro-Israel, right-wing, crazy Zio organization. और उन्होंने एक आर्टिकल लिखा कि यार ये बंदा क्यों जीता है, और ये जीता है because of a secret Pakistani Marxist movement. And they mentioned Amar Ali Jan's Haqooq-e-Khalq movement. अब I love Amar, he's a good friend, लेकिन उन लोगों ने एक सीट कंटेस्ट की थी PP 160 में और उनको 16,000 वोट मिले थे, 1,600 वोट, sorry, okay? So it gave this whole thing कि okay, this is the secret group that infiltrated American politics and blah blah blah. जो बंदा यहाँ पे सीट नहीं जीत सकता वो न्यूयॉर्क में इलेक्शन जिता रहा है, right? And somebody asked Grok, is this true? Now, what did Grok do? Grok scanned all available information and it found the New York Post article and it says, yes, reports confirm it. And then it saw people's tweets saying the same thing and it was like, yes, because why? Because AI models work not on veracity. They don't have the ability to tell you what's right or what's wrong, whether it's day or whether it's night. They work on volume. And this is what in computer science terms was called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So if you poison the data stream on which the AI learns, then the fruit of the poison tree is also poisoned.
And Israel
I
is
will
doing
give you
this.
an example.
Israel is doing this.
Israel is doing it. Israel awarded about, I think, a $10 million contract to Trump's former campaign company to flood the internet with videos, with websites, and with blogs supporting the Israeli narrative. So when the AI is consuming that data, right, because the ratio will be 100 pro-Israeli posts to say 10 pro-Palestinian posts, it will give the weightage to the Israeli posts. So देखें, कोई ये नहीं कह रहा कि आप अपने AI को बंद रखें, ऐसे नहीं है, अपने AI को on रखें, लेकिन अपने दिमाग को उसके साथ बंद ना करें. And I can tell you something even more terrifying if you want, but if you want to do another round and get back to me on that.
I want to actually pick up on something very important, जो अभी इना सबा आपने जिक्र किया था. I'm going to pick it up from. You said कि पहले you would read, you know, us and him, and now we are all reading our own, what we like. So, you know, you can call it becoming hostage to our own timelines. ये जो जितना अभी सारे लोगों ने देखा है, इनकी feeds में, Talat, I'll point this to you, इनकी feeds में वो चीज़ आ रही है जो इनको अच्छी लगती है.
Yeah.
So, पहले जो हम communication की बात कर रहे थे, you would have access to opposing points of views. आपको कुछ चीज़ बुरी भी लग रही है, लेकिन आप उसको पढ़ते थे, सुनते थे, and you would learn from it. Now, You know, we only hear or read what we want, and this is happening across the world. ये कितना serious है तला? How is it skewing our national discourse and our own thoughts?
Well, this presumes that we have a national discourse, but let me start from the sort of lower end of it. I think we need to rephrase whether we are using AI or AI using us. You spoke about, we living in an echo chamber where our own voice is rebounded to us, and we believe this to be the general opinion. But we have had this kind of a problem in its initial stage with the search engines as well. So the search engines used to throw up the kind of material that was, according to them and their judgment, or whatever that means, was worth reading to me. So that has now been accentuated. So that's what I meant when I said that the scale of the problem is going to be going to the scarier levels. So AI algorithms obviously create an echo chamber, but I'm not too sure that that's by our own choice. I think the echo chambers are also being crafted by the algorithms who are now lethal. So they deliberately want to create an imaginary alternate universe for you, which is slightly detached from reality. In fact, you earlier spoke about and asked this pointed question about who is getting more empowered and who's losing the game. Is the government becoming more empowered at the expense of the people? So let me give you the answer. There are two categories of governments in this world. There are governments that are represented by countries which are known as leapfroggers, the ones that are really jumping ahead of the others. The other are really laggards. So it depends on where the government is located, Fahad. If the government is located in the category of leapfroggers, like China, like certain parts of Europe, like Russia, like the US, then the government is getting empowered at the expense of the people. And if the government is located in the category of laggards, then the government is on the losing end, and the people are also at the losing end. So AI is not going to be affecting people and governments alike across the board. It will be affecting countries according to their level of development and achievement. And that is why I think you are moving towards massive monopolies at the expense not just of people, but of countries and civilizations. I think that takes you to a whole new level of threat perception. In terms of communication, I think just one point, and we can further elaborate it. Communication is, it depends on the recipient's ability to do due diligence. Fake news is not new. The scale is different. But what really strikes me is the laziness of the consumer. In this day and age, those who deploy AI slightly more intelligent as compared to the others are able to track down fake news, are able to know fact from fiction. They know deep fakes. All you have to do is to not be lazy. So I think if you are a lazy consumer of AI product, then frankly, you have no chance in hell of surviving the information warfare. But if you're slightly more intelligent and have developed a certain critical faculty to apply AI to counter AI propaganda, I think you're in a good place for now.
Acha, now let's do this. Let's make this an interactive session. हमारे पास हैं about 21 मिनट और 8 सेकंड है. तो let's make it interactive. बीच-बीच में हम सवाल भी करते रहेंगे. So do we have a mic जी? Anybody wants to ask a question? हाथ खड़ा कीजिएगा अपना. Identify yourself और सवाल जिससे कर रहे हैं. और kindly आपसे गुजारिश है कि छोटा सवाल हो, उसके बाद आपके अंदर एक बहुत प्रेशर बिल्ड कर रहा है एक लंबी तकरीर का, तो वो सेशन के बाद we'll be more than happy to listen to it. जी, माइक है जी, इधर दीजिएगा जी सर को, यहाँ ये सामने.
हेलो. हेलो जी, मेरा क्वेश्चन मैडम हिना से है कि इन्होंने बोला कि एआई के अंदर डिप्लोमेसी नहीं है, तो मैं एक ये क्वेश्चन करना चाहता था इनसे कि क्या हमारा जो अभी ये करंट रजीम चल रहा है ये क्या सारे का सारा एआई के बेस पे चल रहा है जिसमें डिप्लोमेटिक नहीं है और टेबल टॉक पे नहीं आते हैं?
ओके, क्या कह रहे हैं? I didn't understand that.
हाँ, neither did I. But I think आपने assume किया है कि मैं कह रही हूँ कि AI में डिप्लोमेसी नहीं है. मैं बिल्कुल मुख्तलिफ बात करी थी because मैं बल्कि पीछे मुड़ के मैंने देखा कि हमारा topic of discussion is power, politics and the algorithmic Cold War. So I was talking about the power structures and the political structures of the world order and the world that we inhabit today. And what I was saying was that in a world which celebrated negotiations, diplomacy, finding solutions to existing problems, we are now living in a world which is hell-bent upon and ensuring creation of new problems and considers diplomacy and negotiation and mediation to be bad words, as we saw in our own region between India and Pakistan, and as we are seeing all over the world. There is a run towards militarization that is happening as we speak. I have been lectured and hectored by many, many Western diplomats on how Pakistan, no matter how threatened it feels by an emerging India, by a roguish India, should never invest in military warfare and should. What about feeding the children? What about climate change? What about this, that, the other? And then one Ukraine happens and all of European Union decides to redraw the rules of the game.
Yep.
And NATO is now allowing, European Union countries are allowing below the budget military expenditures. That has never happened before. People were talking about 2% of the GDP and now they're celebrating any country which goes up to 5%. Canada, little pretty Canada is feeling threatened enough to now increase its military spending. In all of this, there's this fear that, oh, somebody's emerging, threatening, they're going to come and eat us up. We're like, you know, that country hasn't really colonized anyone else. That country hasn't gone to war. That country hasn't gone to war for the sake of human rights and then made a mess out of it. But yes, let's build that fear. So the world that we're living in, this is based on fear. It is dividing us, and these algorithms are dividing us also internally. Okay, so so we are living in a world which is exceptionally, exceptionally dangerous because the tools that are now at our disposal are now time sensitive to a point of milliseconds. You will not take days to take decision. If there is a nuclear warhead coming in, which may not have, but it is dual use, it is capable, you have few seconds to decide do you want to respond or not. And the most dangerous thing, which I've recently read in one of the finest books, I think, not the finest, but a good book, Genesis, which was one of the last books of Henry Kissinger, and Eric Schmidt have co-written this. And in that, they talk about how there is a fear that some nuclear capacity is already has been bestowed upon AI models, meaning is AI-led. Now, in this, that's why I said in this race towards AGI, because that's a race. Right now, artificial intelligence को कर रहा है जो कर रहा है, और उसको हम different forms में देखते हैं. Artificial general intelligence is what the race is. Okay, it is the frontier technology. Frontier technology की race इस वक्त हो रही है. उस race में rules of the game कहीं नहीं है. किसी किस्म के rules of the game नहीं है. किसी किस्म की negotiation नहीं है. हम ऐसे दुनिया से निकले हैं, दुनिया में गुजारा है, जब during the height of Cold War, during the height of conflicts, we were still speaking to each other. Now we're telling each other and everyone, there are two camps, the good and the bad, the us and the them, and it is happening at the regional level, it is happening at the global level, and I just want to perhaps make this very important point, and I'm going to take the liberty of making that point. What is happening in the world is, we have weaponized the very tools of world order. What do I mean by that? Economic sanctions, trade sanctions, human rights has been weaponized. ये जो अब हम टूटा हुआ एक world order देख रहे हैं, उसकी वजह ये है क्योंकि we have decided. I have sat on stages in Aspen just this summer and being told by a really important American, you know, not to be named because it was Chatham House rules, who said that when questioned by me about, well, you're supposed to be threatened by Iran, what about Israel, and what about the fact that it has attacked 10 countries? And they're like, well, but the US always treats its allies differently. And I said, why haven't we done economic sanctions on them yet? They said, but that's a fact. We always treat our allies separately. So when you start making these exceptions, and when you stop applying laws, rules, not in a universal way, but I choose you, I like you, different rules for you, different rules for you. This is what happened, the world order collapses, and nothing else is emerging right now because we are at war with each other, and the countries are at war, and nobody is celebrating negotiation, diplomacy, mediation to reach conclusions. We are celebrating this, hate, divisions, and everything else that we are living through. Right?
And now is the time of monsters. Now is the time of monsters. As they say. No,
नहीं
the
मैं
old is dead and the new
जरार
is
एक्चुअली वो एक हमारे पास क्वेश्चन भी आया हुआ है बट अगेन जो ये बात हो रही थी ना स्पीड ऑफ when she was saying के the speed we have no time now in a conflict like India and Pakistan split second decisions may death can start raining down on countries. This element of speed, ये जो speed of change है, we've all seen change through our lives from analog to digital, but the speed at which AI and new tech is changing our lives. Do you think we are grasping that speed of change?
No, I don't think we're capable of grasping it. I don't think. Because right now we're in the middle of it. Right now the old is dying and the new has not yet been born,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
We are in the birth pangs, very painful birth pangs. I think that one vision of the future you can already see in a little envelope of land called Gaza. And that is a trailer, it is a preview for what awaits you. And I will tell you this because this is the best real-time example of the most evil use of AI algorithms that you could ever conceive of. Israel has an AI algorithm which is called Where's Daddy? Abu Kaim. और इसका मकसद क्या है कि this calculates when alleged suspected Hamas operatives are with their families so that they can all be targeted together. और इसका नाम रखा है Where's Daddy? Then there's Gospel, that's another targeting algorithm. Then there's Morpheus, और Morpheus का काम है कि the Israeli soldiers, they love posting their war crimes on social media and on TikTok. And in fact, on their dating profiles, apparently Israeli women love it when you have a picture of you burning Gaza in the background. They think you're a real man. There's an algorithm called Morpheus, जिसका काम है to scrub the internet social media profiles of Israeli soldiers to hide their war crimes. That technology is being exported. It's going to be used in the West. It's going to be used in America. And some version of it will be coming to you very soon.
Amna, I think आपके पास एक question है.
Yes, so we have a question. What role should multinational tech corporations play in shaping the emerging roles of AI geopolitics?
Multinational, what roles will multinational corporations play in?
What role should multinational tech corporations play in shaping the emerging roles and rules of AI geopolitics?
I think we've addressed
the big
that.
tech, big tech, supra-state organizations.
I think the should part of the question is a little presumptuous. They would not listen to what we want them to do. That is the fundamental principle on which multinationals have always worked on. They do not listen to moralistic arguments. We can have a debate as to the ethical side of regenerative or generative AI and how they need to be complying with human ethical standards, but they are not going to listen to us. I think this problem we faced with regard to genetic engineering as well, though it was kind of controlled, but genetic engineering was not multiplying on its own. The problem with AI is that once you have gotten the genie out of the bottle, the genie is going to take over, and they will make tons and tons of dollars on it. And it's not even about money. It's this innate desire built into the human psyche of control. I think Elon Musk does not need more money. What he does need is to satiate his desire to control, and that's an insatiable desire.
Yes.
So the multinationals have a different kind of a psyche altogether. Scaling the problem is an issue. I spoke earlier about the structure of global politics and how that is changing. My other fear is that at a sub-Cold War level, the AI problem is going to seep into our homes, and it is going to create mental upheavals. I think that is where they would have this decisive advantage over civilizations. Remember when Hitler started his system, the neo-Nazis used to recruit children at the tender age of 6 to 7. And this is when they would start to school them and train them and immerse them in the neo-Nazi ideology. So really about 80 years ago, neo-Nazis started to do something which AI is doing to us at a mass scale. You know, catching the children fresh, catching them as they go to grade 3 or 4 with the smartphones in their pocket and AI handy. That's like Hitlerian model at a global scale. And that is going to create the kind of mental problem that is going to be a problem in every household. So on the one hand, you have a macro cataclysmic situation develop. On the other hand, you have a micro level problem explode in every household. And that's really a bad binary situation to be in.
You know, अभी जो हम बात कर रहे थे कि AI जो है वो हमें empower भी करता है, लेकिन as you said कि it can have a very devastating effect on our mental health also. Empowering के साथ साथ हमारी जो cognitive abilities हैं, उसको भी वो कुछ हद तक weaken कर रहा है, because you know आपकी dependency बढ़ती जा रही है बहुत ज़्यादा. मैं actually, if you allow me, एक ऐसा issue है which connects to all of us and which is, नाज़िर साहब एक second, मैंने आपसे एक request करनी है. तो हमारे profession में increasingly people, sorry about that, I need to ask you, we are increasingly dependent on AI to do our work. और हमें नजर आ रहा है कि ये AI से लिख के कॉलम दिया हुआ है. बच्चों के homework on AI, मैं नासिर साहब को इसलिए कह रहा था because I don't know, maybe you want to just make a quick comment on this. How serious is this issue in schools of AI being used and school managements not being able to figure out किसका करना क्या है? Because ये हम सबको affect करता है. तो do you want to just add a couple of things on that?
I didn't realize I was going to be one of the panelists today, but yeah, no, we were having an entire chat about this on various panels, and you know, not just schools, but even at home, you know, there's a concern about how kids are using AI. Our keynote speaker today, Daniel, put something on screen where you know, the AI essentially you know, almost convinced a 22-year-old to commit, you know, suicide. People are now conversing with AI in a manner that is extremely unhealthy. They're using it, they're forming, you know, as Zarar Saab said, you know, relationships with AI. They're using it as their therapist. They're not understanding that, you know, it's basically just a probabilistic processing engine doing pattern recognition, so it's just telling you what you want to hear. So people's, you know, beliefs, phobias, fears are being amplified by the AI, sometimes to very destructive effect. You know, in schools, we're trying to figure out how to effectively use it because we want to move on from the fear, and you know, we want to try to find ways of using it effectively. So we want to move towards a world where, you know, students co-create with AI. You know, because it is going to be a reality in the future. We want to move towards a world also where we start focusing more and more on human qualities in the classroom, and for teachers to spend more time teaching kids about ethics, empathy, and what it really means to be human, so that they can, you know, add their human distinctiveness to whatever AI is giving them and not just absorb it verbatim. So it's a challenge for us. I think we need to spend a lot of time sensitizing kids on these risks and at the same time teaching them how to use it, because it's going to be such an essential tool in the future. And I think over the next couple of years, that's going to be our biggest challenge that we're going to be working on. But it is a challenge. And like I said in the beginning, it's a bit scary, but it's also a bit exciting at the same time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. We are almost out of time, but I think we have another question. So some people have forwarded a question to you.
So how is AI reshaping traditional concepts of power in the international system, particularly between major states?
Inasaba, you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. But look, before that, I think it is very important to say, because what happens is a lot of times we get warped up into AI. What is AI? Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence का क्या मतलब है? Artificial intelligence Okay, so till the time that you're assuming that you will always be in control when you say, what are big corporations doing, algorithms, somebody is feeding in, and then they have access to all of human learning. Yahi hota hai na? It's self-learning, right? Now, but artificial general intelligence would lead to a point where autonomously they will be learning beyond what they're being fed. And that is where the nation states come in. And that is what the fight is for, right? Because then you're talking about, now interestingly, let's do a raise of hands. How many people think that, okay, the processing speed of AI versus human beings, how many times more? How many people think it's in millions and how many people think it's in thousands? How many people think it's in thousands?
Thousands.
How many? How many people think it's in single digits? The ability of their processing speed versus human beings. You know, it is 25 million times more. So what an average person leads, and this is all, by the way, Eric Schmidt talking, not me. I mean, I don't rely on myself for technical information. So this is now an average person, what they learn in an entire 4-year undergrad program. These tools can acquire that same information and give you all everything within 2 days. So that is what so people are actually concerned, smarter people than myself, who are the makers of these tools, are concerned about what the next generation of challenge is going to be. What we're talking about is the current challenge. That is when they acquire, autonomy, and then they're not our hostage. Laws, lethal autonomous weapons versus drone strikes, what is the difference? In lethal autonomous weapons, you give them a target and then you give them autonomy to achieve that target no matter how. It was used against the Iranian scientists by Israel. It has been used in Gaza repeatedly. So we're talking a different scale from what but also, Fahad, I think it's really important to mention that artificial intelligence can also be used very intelligently. And that's why the whole point of regulation. So when you talk about nation states, if we were a normal functioning world order today, we would all be getting together and regulating AI use. Right now what is happening is AI regulation is happening in silos. The US has a completely different model. The European Union has a completely different model. And all we are, instead of AI being hostage to humans, humans are being hostage to AI because humans can't speak to each other. And that's why the breakup in negotiation, mediation, diplomacy, talking to each other, and the impact of that on bigger structures.
Very well said. So we are out of time. I'd like to thank Sayyid Talat Hussain, Inar Bani Khar Sahaba, and Zarar Koro for joining us. And thank you all for listening to our discussion.
All for today. Thank you to our guests for such an insightful conversation.